Hi everybody! This is the introduction to my final project in CRS 580. And this project came from my interest in usability and its relationship to measurements and creativity. And when I picked this topic, I looked for a research report on an organization which actually used the measures we learned in this course. And after hours and hours of searching, I found a spectacular case. And I'm very excited to be able to share that report with you today. But before we get started, some credits. This report could not have been written without all the theorists who came up with the following measures that are useful: creativity tools, multiple intelligence, PEPS, Torrance test of creative thinking, Myers-Briggs, KAI, foresight, Ekval's creative climate, and emotional intelligence. And now, on with the story. The Class That Saved Christmas, a true story, reported by Catherine Tillman, Buffalo State College, December 2010 for CRS 580. 'Twas 3 months before Christmas, and Santa was mad, for the toys from his workshop were coming out bad. They were boring and ordinary and regular and dull, and the elves were all listless in a creativity lull. Something was wrong, Santa knew, and he feared that the children would be disappointed this year, for in all the years past he had packed up his sleigh with toys that were creative in every way. They were novel and useful and elegant too. But his elves this past year had produced nothing new. And without any toys, St. Nick's biggest fear was that there wouldn't be any Christmas this year. Rather than panic, St. Nick got online, and when he Googled creativity, he was happy to find a class he could take that might help him discover what he needed to do to help his team recover. The class was 580 at Buffalo State. It was distance learning, which he thought was great. He could be incognito and no one would know about the troubles he was having up north in the snow. In his first class, Santa learned that he needed to assess the creative level of his team so he could track their progress. So he chose a test called the TTCT, for it had consistently shown good reliability. And he gave it to the elves, but when he tried to score their test, he just couldn't do it. So he thought it was best to mail them off to experts, for he really needed to know which elves scored high and which ones scored low. And while Santa was waiting for the scores to arrive, he took some psychological measures that really opened his eyes to his own creative talents and his leadership strengths. And he said, "Ho, ho, ho, this is better than a shrink." And he learned he was low in emotional IQ and promised Mrs. Claus that he would work to improve his listening skills, for he now realized that he'd never really tried to see life through her eyes. And as he promised to be her faithful translator, the twinkle in her eyes grew greater and greater. Santa also discovered from his Myers-Briggs type that the career he was in fit him just right. As an E, he loves being around all the kids and gets energy from working at all those mall gigs. And S means he digs out the facts in the letters from the children who promise each year to do better. And when it comes time to choose the good girls and boys, his soft-hearted F means all children get toys. And it's quite a good thing that Santa's a J, because he sticks to his schedules, and on Christmas Day, children find their toys placed under their trees, and they might still be waiting if he was a P. Next, Santa learned about multiple intelligence test, and when he gave one to Rudolph, he was impressed that although Rudolph was low in linguistics like reading, in kinesthetic intelligence, Rudolph was leading. And in spatial intelligence, Dancer and Prancer excelled. And Santa exclaimed, "Oh, this is swell!" And he gave them new jobs where they would be best. And now Dancer and Prancer are the sleigh's GPS. Santa also discovered when he took the PEPS his preferred learning styles. And so he took some steps to brighten his lights and have music piped in, and he swapped his desk chair for one from his den. And while he was reading his mail on cold days, he kept snacks nearby and a blanket in case a draft from outside came in under the door, for his preference was warm, according to his score. The next thing Santa did was review the research on Kirtan's KAI measure, and he thought it might work to test all the elves, to find out if his team were adapters or innovators, and to look at the mean. And he was thrilled to discover that 1 year ago the elves had taken this test, which was a good thing to know, for now he could study the trends in his shop and find out if elf dropout was related or not. So the elves took the retest, and St. Nick realized that the innovators had become adapters right in front of his eyes, and that last year his decision to allow no mistakes had caused innovators to all get the shakes. A few couldn't cope, so they quit, but some changed into adapters to avoid all the pain. Santa pounded his desk and said, "This has just got to stop, for I need both I's and A's to have success in my shop." Then he turned with a jerk and flew down the hill through the snow to his workshop, for his mind was filled with ideas from 580 that might help his team restore and recover their creative steam. He flung open the door, and the elves heard him say, "Based on Ekval's research, there is simply no way for these elves to create or to be innovative, but things will be different now that I'm educated." And he gathered the elves and told them he had learned in this class he was taking that the elves had been burned, for in their workplace he had not been promoting creative thinking, and that's why they were choking. "We had too many rules and we didn't take risk, but that's in the past. Now I promise you this. From this day forward, your new ideas will be received with applause and cheers. From this day on, you'll have time to think through any idea you have that is new. And I make a commitment to make sure you'll have fun. And now you can decide how to get your work done. And we will engage in lively debates. And if our views differ, it will be safe to say what you mean and mean what you say. And this policy will start on this very day." And all the elves cheered and were filled with delight. Now the workshop is buzzing all day and all night, and Santa is back to his jolly old self, and he laughs out loud as he calls to his elves, "Come developers, come ideators, come clarifiers too, and come implementers, we can't forget you. Thanks to foresight we know to have no hesitation, and to use every style preference when we make our creations." And so progress continues, and productivity is soaring with creative new toys that are no longer boring. And just this past week, Santa's workshop was named as a top 10 employer in the Elves Hall of Fame. Soon Santa will be ready to start loading his sleigh, since his 580 project is now out of the way. And it's a sure bet that on Christmas Eve night, you will hear him exclaim as he drives out of sight, "If you use what you've learned in 580, you'll thrive. That's what I did, and why Christmas survived. Merry Christmas, Supremes! Happy holidays, too! And thanks, Dr. Cabra, for pulling us through." Postscript. And so, my friends, now you can see these measures score high in usability. And as a result of the great success Santa had when he put them to the test, he has decided to continue his studies. After all, the Supremes have become like his buddies. So to Buffalo State, he might just guide his sleigh if he can just figure out how to dodge CIA.